Welcome to the Global Investor Podcast, a show that focuses on helping foreign investors enter the lucrative U.S. real estate market. Host Charles Carrillo combines decades of real estate investing experience with a professional background in international banking to interview experts in all areas of U.S. real estate investing. Now, here's your host, Charles Carrillo.
Welcome to another episode of the Global Investors Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Carrillo. Today we have Monick Halm. Monick is a real estate investor, syndicator, and developer with over 14 years of experience in multifamily, mobile home and RV parks, flipping, commercial, vacation rentals, syndication, and ground-up development. Together with her husband and her investors, she owns over 1,100 rental units across 6 states. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Charles.
So please tell us a little bit about your background, both personally and professionally, before getting involved in real estate investing.
Yeah, so I did not know anything about real estate investing. I was raised, I have a great family, great parents. They're from Haiti. I'm a first generation American. And my parents always told me, Monick, you can be anything you want, but in parentheses, as long as you're a doctor, lawyer, professor, engineer, because that was for them what success was. And that's all I knew too. And of those choices, I chose law and I became a lawyer. I was very unhappy as a lawyer, but that's a whole other conversation. The only thing I'd been taught about real estate was that you should buy your own home. So I went to do that after a couple of years of practice. And it's like, okay, well, I guess I should buy a house. That's what you're meant to do. But I live in Los Angeles, which is super expensive market. And even though I had fairly decent, low 6-figure income, I couldn't afford a house by myself because a starter house in LA is in a semi-decent neighborhood. We're looking upwards of $600,000-$700,000. And this was back in 2005. Now it's more. So I was a friend of mine suggested we buy a duplex together. The original idea was that he'd live on one side, I'd live on the other side. Then we ended up finding, though, instead this property that had, instead of 2 eagle sides, it was this old Craftsman. I had a larger downstairs unit, a 2-bedroom upstairs, a converted garage in the back. That was a 3rd unit. And so we each took a bedroom in the bottom unit, in the larger unit, and then rented out the upstairs, rented out the back house, or even rented out our basement. And we started house hacking before I knew that was a thing. I was just like, oh, that's so cool. These people are paying our mortgage. It's amazing. And then when I met my husband, he had a duplex. So we got a single family rental together. Never really thinking of it as a way to replace my income or even to get out of law, which I hated. I wasn't thinking that far ahead. But after when the crash, before the crash, when I was about 5.5 months pregnant, and my boss at the time, still working as a lawyer, called me into his office, and I was expecting a bonus because I've been working so hard, but instead I got fired, which was quite a surprise and a shock, and not welcome news, but it was a gift in the end. So I decided, I'm so pregnant right now. I'm just going to wait until after I give birth, have a short maternity period. Then I will look for another job. And my daughter was born late August of 2008. And within a month of her birth, the markets were in free fall. A couple months after that, my husband's graphic design business was down 9%. And it was not a time to go to find jobs. It was like people were not hiring. And it was the couple of real estate properties that we had that actually helped keep a roof over our heads at the time. And we ended up selling one of them and using the proceeds to start flipping houses. We started doing that when houses were on sale. We did that until 2015 when houses were definitely not so on sale, especially in LA. It's like hindsight, it's like that, actually there was still more runway, but it was getting really expensive and really competitive. And it was flipping as a job, right? You buy a property, you have to fix it up, you sell it, then you have to start over again. It's like a short-term job. I wanted something more passive. I wanted to buy and hold. And so we were looking for a fourplex in LA, which was the biggest thing I could imagine getting at that point. But nothing made any financial sense. Nothing cash flowed. It's like you're looking at paying over $2 million for something with zero cash flow. So I ended up talking to a friend who he's like, oh, you know what? His friend, Robert Helms, is the host of Real Estate Guys Radio podcast. He's like, he's coming to LA tomorrow night. You want to come out to dinner? Maybe he could give you some advice. And so I was like, sure, yeah. So I went out, and then this conversation with Robert just completely changed the trajectory of my life. So the first thing is, he was asking me what I was doing. I told him about the flipping and how that was challenging and looking for this fourplex. And he said, LA is a really tough market. I always say, live where you want to live, invest where the numbers make sense. And I went, oh, because until that moment, I assumed you had to invest where you lived, where you could drive to your property, touch it, self-manage it. Like, it hadn't occurred to me that you could invest outside of where you lived. So that was a big paradigm shift and literally opened up the world to me. And then the other thing he said was, and you can buy that fourplex by yourself, but you're limited to your own capital and credit. He said, alternatively, you could bring a group of investors together and you could get 100 or 200 units. And he started telling me about the benefits of that. I think my head exploded when he said that. I was like, what? I until he told me that, I thought you had to be a billionaire to do that. I had no idea that normal people could invest that way. But everything in me was like, yes, I want to do that. I want to do that. And I got so excited about it. And I wanted to be around people that thought 100 or 200 units was normal, because until that moment, everyone around me thought a fourplex was a really big deal. And I wanted to be around people that were thinking bigger. So I committed. I went home that night, told my husband, there's this thing, it's called syndication. It's awesome. It's like, let's learn how to do it. So in January of 2016, we were at our first syndication seminar, and then we were all in. So that year we passively got into 2 deals and then actively did 3, and got over 1,000 doors in that first year.
Wow.
Of syndication. And then we've just gone on since.
Wow, that's crazy. One thing following up is you're talking about the end of 2008, and I bought my second multifamily in 2008, and it was like, I remember it was like Lehman went under the last 6 months, and then I bought this property in like October, and then like 2 months later, Bernie Madoff was a fraud, and like it was like CNBC was like watching everything was going downhill. I mean, every day something blew up, someone was lost, it was crazy. It was nuts. I couldn't believe, when I look back on it, I was like, I was nuts for doing anything back then with so much turmoil, but it's crazy.
Hindsight, though, is you're probably pretty happy you did.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I got fixed debt on that property, and it's actually my best performing assets I own myself. But that being put aside, so that's awesome. With the Robert Helms, that was cool, because a few years ago, or several years ago, I got an email from him, and that was one, because I was like, how am I going to build this real estate thing, what I'm doing? And that actually, for that email from him I was getting, it was talking about syndication. And I was like going back and forth. I'm like, I don't want to do it. I like doing my own things and answering to myself. And that's crazy that Robert Helms, he's fantastic. If you haven't heard him, he's on the Real Estate Guys. Is that what it is? Radio show? That's his thing?
Real Estate Guys Radio. Yeah.
It's fantastic. And he has all these he's investing in everything now. Every time I hear from him, he's investing in something different in a different country. So
yeah, he's a resort in Belize.
Yeah,
that he developed. Yeah.
Nice. So what's your company's current acquisition and criteria and strategy?
Yeah. So right now, we're more on the money side, and which is, I like, because it allows me as well partner with people to get into different deals, which is why we have we can have such a diversity of assets, because we have our we have multifamily, we have a portfolio of single family, we have a mobile home park, RV park, and we have industrial. My focus, though, probably since 2019, the beginning of 2019, has been more on the industrial side. So what had happened was so a couple of those, I told you we got 3 deals in 2016 that we syndicated, that we were on the GP side, and one was a mobile home park, and 2 were these apartment buildings in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which they were rough properties. so definitely C class, C minus, maybe D plus, one of them. So they were tough. It's hard to. We thought we could shift the culture a little more in those properties, especially one that we were able to. So it was a tough deal, and literally I was praying for some miracle to help us get out of it, and a miracle happened, because some 1031 exchange buyer wanted to buy them, and he bought them at a 4 cap.
Oh wow!
4 cap.
Really wanted them.
Good. I pray every day that he does well with them, because gosh, he saved us. But so and our investors did well. Whatever. It was good to get out of it the way that we did, but it was great as a seller. Scared the poo-poo out of me as a buyer. I was like, I don't want to compete against that. That's insane. And so I thought, okay, obviously I still love multifamily. I think there's always going to be a need for that, especially like B class, C class. Although we've moved more on the B class side. It's not quite as challenging in a lot of ways. But I was just seeing multifamily feeling a lot like a seller's market, and I don't like being a buyer in a seller's market. So we started looking around for different asset classes. I landed in industrial, which was an asset class that definitely does not have the herds going after it. It's not as much interest, but it's an asset class that has a high demand. So over this past year, even through COVID, through the pandemic, industrial performed the best, and there's just been a growing demand for it. Even as retail is hurting and online retailers do better, they need place they need to store their stuff, and they need distribution centers, and they need data centers, and so there's all of this. There's still and then there is manufacturing in this country, and food processing, and the companies that run our world, our country in these industrial spaces. There's that need for that type of real estate.
So tell us. Sorry. Oh, can you just tell us a couple more about the tenants that use that? I'm sorry to cut you off. Other than you went to food processing, these other ones, I don't think people really understand. They think just like manufacturing, I guess, when you just throw out industrial, even though there's like cold storage, there's data, there's all these different things, and how e-commerce has really accelerated the want and the need for industrial.
Yeah. So I'll share about we have a 6 office industrial park portfolio in Houston. That one's a little different. Those are flex warehouse spaces. We have 109 spaces, and that is a combination of retail. So those spaces can be used in a lot of different ways, but that it does count as an industrial use. But there's everything from garages and bakeries, but we also have churches using those spaces, and so there's a lot of different uses. So it can be flexible in that sense with the flex warehouse space. Now what we mostly do is we do something called a sale leaseback. So there's a facility that has a property that they want to sell but still use. So they're selling it usually because they need to get equity out of that property. So they're going to sell it, but then they lease it back. and they become the tenants, a sale leaseback. So we have, what have we gotten? So we have a cold storage facility. So that was a frozen pie manufacturer. They white label frozen pies for groceries, grocery store chains, and so they that was a facility that we did. We have a organic baby food company facility. We have a facility that does they do face and hair products. They manufacture face and hair products. We have one that does foam products for like they do it for Whirlpool and BMW and a bunch of different companies like that. They manufacture foam products. We have another one that we're getting fencing company. So it's just this it can be all different types of companies. And then you'll see that you can have tenants like Amazon, right? So Amazon they'll need a store, they'll need warehouses, they need distribution centers, they need data centers. So those are that's on the e-commerce side. There's a lot of a need for industrial, but then just your average standard company, all the millions of companies out there that make things or produce things, or do research and development or whatever. All of them need industrial space.
Yeah, and then like you were saying before, manufacturing is not dead. There's a lot of specialized manufacturing, especially in the medical device. That's something that doesn't get outsourced, and I don't think that gets any coverage in the media. But it's something that is alive and well in the United States because we have pockets of, I guess you would say, communities with very educated people in them that are like engineers and stuff that are building this, I guess you would say. Yeah. But where I'm from, originally in Connecticut, it's we have something like that too. It's a lot of we have a lot of specialized people there that are manufacturing and something that's alive and well up there. And but anywhere you look for industrial, it's so many different articles I read on it, and there's such a lack of it. So that's a great asset class I just want to touch on, because I don't think most people understand what goes into or what the possibilities of that broad industrial kind of name can do. But that's cool. That's cool. So you mentor a lot of real estate investors. Can you give a brief overview of steps a new investor should follow to be successful?
Yeah. So with Real Estate Investor Glasses, my focus on helping women create passive income streams through real estate. I have a big, hairy, audacious goal to help 1 million women create financial freedom through real estate. And so when they're starting, I think the first step is to figure out where do you want to go. So it's kind of like I liken it to you're going to go on vacation, right? And so you say, okay, well, what's my first step? My first question would be, well, where are you going? Where do you want to go? Because if you're going to Paris, it's a little different than if you're going to the next town over. It's a little different if you're going to Antarctica. Right? Those are different trips. So where are you going? And with real estate, it's figuring out, it's like, is your goal, I want enough passive income so I can retire from my job ASAP? Is your goal that I love what I'm doing? I really want tax benefits. That's the main thing. Is your goal that, legacy, leaving a legacy for your family? Is your goal setting yourself up for retirement? Like, what is your goal? It could be some combination of those, but depending on if you're like a long-term, I don't need to see this money for 20 years. That's a little different. That could be a different strategy than I need the cash flow now. I need it ASAP, or I need, chunks of money right now. Then the next question is, how do you want to go? So in my vacation analogy, right? You might want to cruise, or you might fly, or you might bicycle, or you might road trip, right? All those are going to take you on different steps. So with real estate, maybe for you, it's, I love taking an ugly duckling and making it beautiful. Or I love just getting into the numbers and doing big things, or I'd be really excited to work with investors, or I really don't want to do any of that stuff. I never want to deal with the tenant, a toilet, the termite, the 3 T's, right? I just want to get my money, like stick my money at someplace and get it working for me, and be super passive and hands off. So depending on how you want to play in this game, you're going to have different steps. And then you want to figure out your resources. So what resources do you have available to you right now that you can tap into that will get you where you want to go? So resources are money. How much money do you have available? And sources, right? What time? The real estate takes time. Relationships. Real estate's a relationship business. Education and experience. So those are the 5 main resources, but you don't have to have all of them yourself. You just need to know what you do have. So then you can find other people that have what you might be lacking that get you from where you are to where you want to be, so you can close that gap. And then the last thing you're going to put in is creativity and resourcefulness, because that's going to be required to take you from where you are to that end goal in the way you want to play on this journey. So that's how I recommend that people start. And so getting that clarity and then getting education is the first step, because I think that with real estate, because it's probably the most expensive thing that people are going to invest in their lives, mistakes can be very costly. And it definitely helps when you have an education in the front end to avoid those mistakes. I think you're going to get an education either way. You either get it in the front end where it's less painful, or you're going to get it in the end through these tough lessons, right? So either way, you're going to learn. But yeah, I like learning.
That's awesome.
From other people's mistakes more than doing my own. So
that's the best way of doing it.
Yeah.
Shorten that learning curve. So what is the wealth orchard you talk about?
Yeah. So what I love about real estate is, so you can plant a real estate tree, right? Plant a seed for a real estate, and then it's giving you money that you can then take to replant into another one. Especially, either just through your monthly cash flow or doing these cash out refinances, which are I love. They're not a taxable event, and you can take that money and in essence almost recycle it. But for me, I look at it as like the seeds of the real estate tree you planted, giving you fruit. You take that fruit, replant it into another one. That's how eventually you get to your orchard.
Interesting. Very interesting. So you wrote a book, and in that book you talk about the 4 myths of real estate, which I think are pretty common with people before getting involved with real estate. They're a little scared of it. Can you explain what they are?
Sure. So I'm trying to think, because I talk about so many myths as I teach. I'm always like busting myths with all the different areas. But I think one of the main myths that people get, one of them is this, monopoly. I call it like the monopoly game myth. So one is that you have to start with a little greenhouse, then another little greenhouse, and another little green. Once you have another little greenhouse, then you can get to a red hotel, and that's how you have to do real estate investing. And it doesn't have to be that way at all. There's so many different paths, and I had a mentor that started with a 32 unit like building. That was his first investment. So you can start with the red hotel, or you can be like the bank and own a note on something like, something other. There are a lot of different ways to play. So you don't have to just do the little house. Or even further myth is so many people think they have to first buy their own home they live in before they can start investing in real estate. And you don't have to do that. So that's one of the main myths. Like he was like, okay, well, first I'll buy my house and then I can buy another little house, so. You don't have to do it that way. Another myth that people have is that they think it's going to cost an enormous amount of money to get into real estate. And it's almost like whatever amount of money they have, I find they always think they need more before they can do it. A lot of people have this belief it's going to cost them tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, something to get into the game. And there are a lot of different strategies for investing, many of which, they require some creativity and some time usually, but you can get in with little to no money, and there are ways you can do it. So that's a myth that keeps people from even starting, even looking into the game. Similarly, with all the other research, like time, they'll think it takes a lot of time. I'm gonna have to go to all these open houses, or I'm gonna have to have calls at 3 in the morning from a tenant about a toilet. Like, and so there's like, there are a lot of different ways of playing, some of which take very little time. After you've vetted a deal, you put your money in, you wait for it to come back with friends. So that's a myth that people have. And and the last one is that a myth that you have to be a landlord. You're the one doing all the landlording and the property management in order to be an investor. And again, you don't have to do it in that way. You don't have to be the landlord. You don't have to get any calls about any toilets. And even if you do, though, I don't manage any more of my properties. I just have one here in Los Angeles that I still manage. I think in that first duplex that I got, I think since 2005, I've gotten one call at like 1 a.m. And I've never else gotten a late night call, and I've only had to deal with toilets like once. So anyway, so there you go.
I think my most inconvenient call was like 11 p.m. or 10:30 p.m. on Christmas Eve, about a clock toilet.
That's very inconvenient.
That's inconvenient. I was younger.
But out of how many years, right? Like
I know. I self-managed my properties for 6 years, and so it's not that bad. It's just that it does happen. But I've knock on wood, I'm never gonna call at like 3 a.m. Hey, it's on fire, and
yeah.
What do I do?
Yeah.
But so talk us just about your goddess program.
Yeah, so with the Wealthy Goddess program and Real Estate Investor Goddesses, it's about how do you invest in real estate, but for women, just how do we do this in the feminine way? We women are not just smaller, less hairy men. We're actually like chromosomally different. Our brains are like the connections are different, and those differences, those biological differences, actually do affect how we approach money, how we approach investing, how we approach relationship, how we approach how we deal with stress, how we learn, and most of the time, though, in this culture, we're taught how to do those things in a masculine way that are not very supportive for us and end up frying us. And you can get it done, but not in a way that feels super good for us. And so it's a way of like, how do you do this process? How do you find your path? It's the program is not everyone wholesales or everyone flips a house or everyone gets a single family. It's not a cookie cutter type program. It's one where we help, because I don't believe real estate investing is one size fits all. Yeah. So I go through this process to get people to have their own plan. And we have goddesses that are goddesses just getting an 84 unit self-storage, and other ones that are doing multifamily, some doing notes, some doing land, so they're playing in this game in different ways, but all with the goal to create enough passive income streams that it will equal or exceed their expenses.
That's awesome. That's a fantastic program and a fantastic goal that you have.
Thank you.
So how can our listeners learn more about you, your company, and coaching if they're interested?
Yeah, so the best place is probably to go to our website, which is reigoddesses.com. So REI standing for real estate investor, not the sporting goods store. Somebody came to one of my events. She'd been invited by a friend, and that friend was like really sporty and was into it's a kayaking. So she's like, yeah, you want to go to an REI
comes in with a wetsuit.
Yeah, so she's like thinking it was going to be all outdoorsy. So
that's awesome.
Sure. Then she goes on the website. She's like, wait. It ended up being like really great. She a year later, she got financial freedom.
Nice.
Yeah, super excited. She got pregnant that year, and then she told me, now when I give birth after my maternity leave, I don't have to go back to work because I have enough passive income that made me super happy. But so reigoddesses.com is the best place to go to find out about our events and our programs, and to get connected with our community, see the podcast and our blog, all the things.
Awesome. Well, I will put those links into the show notes, and thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Talk to you soon. Hi guys, it's Charles from the Global Investors Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're interested in getting involved with real estate but you don't know where to begin, set up a free 30-minute strategy call with me at schedulecharles.com. That's schedulecharles.com. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Global Investor Podcast. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe on iTunes or Google Play to get new weekly episodes. For more resources and to receive our newsletter, please visit globalinvestorpodcast.com. And don't forget to join us next week for another episode.
Nothing in this episode should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Any investment opportunities mentioned on this podcast are limited to accredited investors. Any investments will only be made with proper disclosure, subscription documentation, and are subject to all applicable laws. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Syndication Superstars, LLC exclusively.